At like 4 a.m., James wakes up to the sound of a woman's voice. He sees a shadow by his bedroom door and decides to go full action hero mode. But when he bursts out ready to throw hands, there's nothing there. The entity's playing mind games. Next day, James goes to this fancy building where Pontifex holds their meetings. Inside, the cult leader, a guy named Arthur, is giving a whole TED talk about how the Empty Man is going to save humanity and bring world peace. You know, standard cult stuff. James is shocked to realize Amanda was part of a group that literally worships this entity. After the presentation, James corners Arthur and demands to know about the Empty Man. Arthur explains the Empty Man is an entity they believe will save humanity. When it merges with a chosen human host, that person becomes the Tulpa. The entity gets a body, humans get enlightenment. Win-win, right? Spoiler, it's not. Still confused but determined, James decides to keep investigating. James sneaks into the building's basement where the cult is holding a ritual. The mentor is leading members in some kind of summoning ceremony, trying to call their entity into the physical world. But security spots James and kicks him out. As he's leaving, this guy named Neil tells James that the person he's looking for, presumably Amanda's consciousness or something, has been taken to a cabin in the woods. The cult is doing some kind of advanced training there to speed up the selection of the Empty Man's next host. James immediately heads for the cabin. When James reaches the isolated cabin, he starts searching for clues. He finds a videotape labeled Manifestation 13 and watches some poor soul going through absolute hell. After watching, James notices a teddy bear he saw in the video has mysteriously vanished from the room, because normal teddy bears just do that, right? Increasingly freaked out, James explores the campgrounds and reaches the lake. There, he sees the entire cult gathered around a bonfire performing some kind of ceremony. Thinking it's just a hallucination, James turns to leave, but suddenly the cult members notice him and start charging. James barely escapes.
Yeah, no.
James rushes to Nora's house and tells her everything. Amanda was part of a radical cult that's trying to resurrect some entity called the Empty Man. While he's explaining, they both get a mysterious phone call. Realizing the cult is now targeting them, James tells Nora they need to run, now. At the train station, James makes Nora promise to call him if anything happens. After she leaves, James is hit with a traumatic memory. He and Nora had an affair while Nora's husband, James' best friend, was still alive. And then, as cosmic punishment, James's wife and kid died in a car accident a year back. So James has been carrying this guilt and trauma for a year, which, as we're about to find out, makes him the perfect target. James has another panic attack and steps outside for a smoke. While he's trying to calm down, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. The teddy bear from the cabin is sitting on his doorstep. It followed him home. That's not creepy at all. Next day, James follows Neil and his cult buddies to Jones Medical Center. They sneak into the hospital, and James follows. He watches them enter a room where they start worshipping someone in a hospital bed, a mysterious figure who's clearly important to their cult. Wonder who that could be. Okay, you probably guessed it's Paul. James manages to grab Neil and takes him somewhere private for a friendly chat. Under pressure, Neil explains that the man they worship is the Tulpa, the current host of the Empty Man. They believe this entity will erase all suffering and boundaries in the world. Neil also drops this bomb. The nightmares and visions James has been experiencing, that's the Empty Man trying to connect with his mind. The entity is preparing James to become its next host. James is understandably not thrilled about this information. That night, James breaks into the Pontifex headquarters looking for answers. He's searching through files trying to identify the mysterious patient when he finds something shocking, a folder with his name on it. Inside is a complete dossier on James, every dark secret, every trauma, every piece of guilt he's been carrying. The cult has been watching him the entire time. Freaking out, James rushes to the hospital to confront the mysterious patient once and for all.
We receive. Certainly.
James arrives at the hospital and can't believe what he sees. Amanda. She's alive, standing there in the room, taking care of the patient. James demands to know who this person is. Amanda reveals the patient's name, Paul, the same Paul from 1995, the first human host of the Empty Man, who's been keeping the entity alive on Earth for over 2 decades. Then Amanda drops the full truth bomb. The Empty Man is an alien entity. Centuries ago, maybe millennia, this alien was supposed to come to Earth as an advanced scout for a larger invasion, but it crash-landed in the Himalayas and died, its physical body rotting away to nothing but a skeleton. However, the alien's consciousness remained trapped in that skull for 500 years, waiting for someone with enough trauma and emptiness to possess. Enter Paul in 1995, who was dealing with his own psychological issues, the perfect host. Amanda continues. For 23 years, Paul has served as the Empty Man's vessel. But Paul's body is failing. They need a new host, and they've chosen James. Then Amanda drops the most devastating line. She knows about the affair. She knows about James's guilt, his trauma, the emptiness he feels every single day. And that emptiness, that's exactly what makes James the perfect vessel. The cult has been orchestrating everything from the beginning, steering James toward this moment. Amanda even admits that the whole ritual on the bridge thing was part of the setup. They used her friends as bait, as sacrifices to draw James into investigating, to expose his trauma, to make him vulnerable. They don't want their god trapped in a dying body again, not like what happened 500 years ago with the previous host, that giant skeleton Paul found in the cave. Amanda tells James to just let it happen, stop fighting. In a nightmarish vision sequence, James is shown the truth. That massive skeleton in the Himalayas cave, that was the Empty Man's original host from centuries ago, just another body it used and discarded. Through a series of psychological attacks, the Empty Man finally breaks through James's defenses and possesses him. James, or rather the entity wearing James's face, picks up a gun and leaves the room with cold, calculated purpose. The Empty Man, now in full control of James, goes to Paul's hospital room. Paul, who's been barely conscious and completely helpless, can only stare as his replacement arrives. James raises the gun and shoots Paul without hesitation. After 23 years of service, Paul is no longer useful. The Empty Man has a new, better body. Paul is discarded like yesterday's trash. With Paul dead and James's consciousness suppressed, the Empty Man, in its perfect new host, is now free to move through the world undetected. The film ends. Still confused? Let me break it down. The Empty Man is an ancient alien entity that came to Earth centuries ago as part of a larger invasion plan, but it crashed in the Himalayas and its physical body died. However, its consciousness survived, trapped in its own skull for 500 years. The entity can only possess people who have significant trauma or psychological emptiness, people with a void inside them. That's why it's called the Empty Man. It literally needs empty people. The first known modern host was someone centuries ago, that giant skeleton. Then Paul, in 1995, became the next host. Now, after 23 years, Paul's body is failing. The Pontifex cult has been carefully grooming James to become the next host. They studied him, learned about his trauma, his guilt, his affair, his dead family. They orchestrated Amanda's involvement, her friends' deaths, everything, all to break James down mentally and make him vulnerable to possession. The 3-day ritual, seeing the entity, being stalked, then possessed, is how the empty man operates. It's not just a myth, it's the entity's actual possession process. And now, wearing James's body like a suit, the empty man is free to walk among humans while planning whatever cosmic horror the rest of its species has in store for Earth.